Yo, what's going on, people? So in this video, we're going to be verifying our Bitcoin setup before we start playing around with Bitcoin a bit more. So it's important just to make sure we're confident that we have the right setup. In the last video, we set up a number of aliases that would make it easier for us to make Bitcoin CLI commands. So we don't have to type them out every single time we want to make a command. So if we just go over to our bash profile, and have a look at that. So if you tap nano and your bash profile, here are all our aliases that we created in the last video. So we have an alias for the Bitcoin directory, where our Bitcoin daemon, the default path for our Bitcoin daemon, called BTC dir. We also have an alias for Bitcoin CLI, BC. We have one for the Bitcoin daemon as well, BD. We've got one called BTC info, which gives us information about our wallet, such as the balance, network information, such as the version and connections to the different nodes on the network, and some mining info, such as the blocks. And then lastly, we have the BTC block command, which gives us the amount of blocks we have downloaded on our node in relation to the total number of blocks in the network. Next, what we want to do is make sure we have the Bitcoin daemon up and running. And so to do that, we're just going to run a process command. So the process command looks like this. And all this is doing is just making sure we have Bitcoin up and running. So I do, been running since December 18th. If you don't have yours running, you can type in this command manually into your terminal, and then I'd recommend adding a cron tab, which we did in the last video, which will just mean you don't have to make sure the daemon's running every time you restart or reboot your machine. It will just do it automatically for you. I think lastly, or coming towards the end, we want to make sure we verify the blocks we have as well, and make sure before we start, we've got all of the blocks downloaded from the blockchain. So we have an alias for this called BTC block. And what should be returned is the number of blocks downloaded on this node against the total number of blocks available. So we're only getting one number returned. So that means we have something slightly wrong in our BTC block alias command. So if we head over to our bash profile, just type nano, which is an editor, which will allow us to edit, in this case, our bash profile, but it could be anything such as a text file. So if we head down to our BTC block command and we have a little look at what it's doing, it's running a Bitcoin CLI command called get block count, which returns the number of blocks on this node. And then we're comparing it against what Block Explorer have, which is basically making the same command. But if we copy this link and head over to our browser, what it will tell us is that this web page is actually not available at the moment. So that's this web page. This page doesn't currently exist. So if you head over to the API reference for the testnet that Block Explorer are basically surfacing, I guess, we have in order to make a command, a HTTP call to their endpoint, the URL is slightly different to what we have in our bash profile alias. It requires you to call API status and then a query parameter with the method you want to use. So that looks like this if you just copy and paste that into your browser. And what it returns is a JSON response with info, and inside info we have a blocks key, and the value of that is the total number of blocks on the chain. So this is actually the endpoint we want to hit as opposed to what we have here. So to make this command a little bit nicer and a little bit more easy to understand, we're going to install a library called curl, which in my opinion makes making HTTP requests via the terminal slightly easier. So if we head back over to our terminal and exit this Nano editor, first thing we need to do is just update our packages and install curl. So sudo apt get install curl, and then the next library we want to use that will make pulling out that value, the blocks value from this JSON response slightly easier, is something called JQ. So I won't go into too much detail about what JQ does, but it'll just make getting this value slightly easier. So to download JQ is a similar process. So we just do a sudo apt get install JQ. It might ask you to enter your password as well, since you're using sudo in the command. Cool. So now that we have curl and JQ installed, we can head back over to our bash profile and change the BTC block command. So we want to change everything in between the quotation marks. So if we do a Control-Shift-6 and just highlight everything in between those quotation marks, like that, and do a Control-K to delete it. I've actually got the new command copied in my notepad, so I'll copy this over. And what this is doing, similarly to what it was doing before, it's calling the Bitcoin CLI to get the block count for this node, and then we're making an HTTP request to this new endpoint, and we're piping it through JQ, and we're returning in the response the .info.blocks value, which is this one. So info.blocks is what we're returning. Cool. So if we save that, Control X and yes, and save that, and make sure we source the file as well. Source our bash profile, and now if we type in BTC block, we should get back two values now. So make sure the two values you have are the same, and that will verify that your node is in sync. Cool. So that's it for this video. In the next one, we're gonna go through a bit more about knowing your Bitcoin setup in a bit more granular detail. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.